This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Hey everyone, hey Jen.
We got a real fun topic for y'all today. What are we talking about?
Student loan debt.
Who doesn't love student loan debt?
I do not love my student loan debt. I am in total mental denial of how much I owe.
Yeah.
And I hate this topic. In fact, writing this gave me some severe anxiety.
Were you
Jen.
activated?
I was very activated.
I was as well. And in fact, I was crying happy tears, and we'll get to why that is, but it's all thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. We're going to talk about what gems they have been insofar as getting student loan debt forgiven once and for all, and how the Supreme Court fucking sucks.
Yes.
Anyway, so six-figure debt. That is where both Carolyn and I are, thanks to student loans plus accrued interest. Fun. And we know we're not alone. Student loan debt is financially crippling an entire generation. It's trapping us in this like seemingly endless cycle of debt and despair. What's worse, we all know, I think, that the cost of a college education keeps going up, but wages do not. And inflation does. So we are going to rage against the nonsense that is student loans today. We're going to break down debt stats, look at racial disparities, and try to answer the question, why do so many of us fall for this erroneous fucking message that you need a college education to make good money? All right. So prepare for anger, everyone. Yeah. I'm going to try not to go Sam Jackson.
I don't even know if I'm angry. I am hopeless. Yeah. I don't have the energy to be angry. I'm in complete denial to where I pretend, I don't know what the word is, but I pretend it doesn't exist. Because
you're in denial.
It's like climate change. I'm where most people are with actual climate change because it's so overwhelming to me, and I just don't see how it's ever going to get paid off. That I just don't deal.
Don't look up, girl. No, it is that. It's head in the sand. It's the Chicken Little approach, or the opposite of the Chicken Little approach. The sky isn't falling because I'm just not going to click on my servicer's website to be reminded of the $137,000 that I owe. But as I alluded to, and we'll talk more about this, especially if you could qualify for it, thanks to Biden and Harris and a long and lengthy career in both public service and nonprofit work, I am currently only 15 payments away from being done.
I am not.
I'm so sorry.
I owe over $200,000 in debt.
Geez, yeah.
I feel incredibly lied to because in order to do what I do, I needed a college degree.
Yep.
I needed to get a license. And unfortunately in mental health, you do not make anywhere. You make $20 an hour when you're first starting out.
And you have to do 3,000 hours.
3,000 hours.
Yeah.
In order to sit for a licensing exam. Yeah. All of which you are paid for. And I think anyone who works in the medical profession or in any industry where you are doing service, your options are to work for a very low paying, very high burnout field in order to get your debt paid off. Yep. Which I would not be able to live where I live. I don't know. I can't say that because there are probably some housing things I could have figured out. But it's really frustrating when you're actually told, well, no, you can't do your job until you have all these other things and you need to go to college. So you have to take this debt out.
Yeah. You know, if anybody's wondering why there are so many nice white lady therapists, this is your reason. Because it is, and we need, and Carolyn and I can both speak to this, you know, me having worked with at-risk youth and not having next to no options for therapists of color who look like the youth I'm serving. And they're like, I can't relate to this nice white lady who grew up middle class in the suburbs. No, why would you? And I don't think you should.
No. It's a shit show. And what you're saying is the people who are doing the work get punished, and the people who are receiving the services, I think it's a disservice.
It is. Absolutely. I agree. So you may be wondering how all this student loan nonsense began. And because we're Jen and Carolyn, we're going to give you a little bit of a historical perspective here. So in response to the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik in 1957, Congress passed the National Defense Education Act. It was sweeping legislation that created federally funded student loan programs and supported national security. So related fields, right, like science and math and engineering and foreign languages. And in 1965, the Lyndon B. Johnson administration expanded federal involvement at all levels of education with the Higher Education Act. And that laid the foundation for the current system of federal student lending. And since then, Congress has passed laws that expand loan eligibility and allow parents to borrow on behalf of their children. They've made it easier for all of us, not just the student, but the parent to go into debt. Thus, the Parent Plus loan, which I helped hundreds of parents apply for when I was working in financial aid. I would talk to people. So the university that I went to and subsequently ended up working at is very expensive. It's a Jesuit university. It's private. Yeah. People get really sold on the idea of it being mission driven and social justice driven. But to that, I would say, if you really genuinely care about social justice, would you be charging, with being able to live on campus over $70,000 a year? I think the answer is no.
Well, and I picked that same school.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Because you didn't have to take the GRE to get in.
Yes.
Which I tried to take it. I could not pass it.
Well, we both suck at standardized tests, right? Which is, we'll rail about that in another episode.
That's really expensive too.
Yes. And test prep is something that, people with privilege and economic, advantages can take advantage of. And I saw that firsthand when I was dating my high school boyfriend. Yeah. And his parents were paying for these expensive SAT prep courses. And I remember paying for myself to take an LSAT, a weekend LSAT course, which is the test you have to take in order to get into law school. I lasted one day. I paid for this thing out of my own pocket. I felt so incapable. Yeah. And once they started calling on people to out loud solve these logic puzzles, which were a real barrier for me, I was like, I'm out. I can't endure the embarrassment of not knowing how to solve this.
My sister didn't pass the LSAT, or she passed it, but she couldn't pass.
She got low scores.
She got low scores and was told that she'd never be a good lawyer because of that, and couldn't get into certain schools. She couldn't. It took her several times to pass the bar. And
she's a phenomenal lawyer.
Brilliant person. Yeah. These tests suck.
They do. They are not a measure of intelligence.
That's my final word on that.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that. I think we definitely need to dedicate a future episode to standardized tests and to the fact that so many institutions of higher learning are now doing away with the need for the SATs and the ACT. Yeah. So all good, hopefully. So Carolyn, do you know how much debt the average student graduates with?
Well, and I'm assuming they mean a bachelor level.
Yes.
The internet tells me that the latest research from different debt organizations is about $30,000.
Yeah. So according to a recent CNN article, the answer is about just under $30,000. And this was for the 21-22 school year. This is according to College Board, whom the article quotes. Among all borrowers, the average balance is $38,290. And this is according to mid-2023 data from Experian, which everyone knows is one of the national credit bureaus. So here's some more appalling stats from the same article. As of the third quarter of 2023, Americans owed $1.74 trillion in education debt. 51% of the 21-22 bachelor's degrees recipients graduated with an average, again, of close to $30,000 in student debt. And among all borrowers, the average student loan debt, I mentioned this, in 2023 is just under $40,000. And that, 53% of federal student loan borrowers owe $20,000 or less, which is great for them.
God, I wish I would.
I know. And 47% of the total outstanding federal loan debt is held by 10% of borrowers who owe $80,000 or more. That's us! And just 10% of college graduates took out private student loans in 21-22, but they had nearly twice as much debt as federal loan borrowers. Interesting. And private really For a long time, private was the way to go if you were taking out or needed loans in addition to what the feds gave you. I would often advise parents like, hey, you might be able to get a better loan from your credit union, for instance, than the Parent Plus loan, which, you know, over 10 years ago when I was working in this field, or about 10 years ago, shit, time flies, was just under 7%. And I'm sure with interest rates being as high as they are is even higher.
Well, my interest rate for my loan, I believe, is almost 10%.
Oh, really?
It might even be higher.
That's crazy.
Very high at the time when I took out my second loan.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I can't. People are like, why didn't you get your doctor? I'm like, because I can't. I'm not allowed to take more loans out and go to school more, even if I wanted to.
It's a huge barrier, right? I would have a minor in psychology if only I could afford to take one more class. But I couldn't do it. So now I'm just an amateur psychologist giving out dangerous advice to people, acting like I know something.
As long as you add a disclaimer, I think you're okay, right?
Yes, I hope so.
Just call yourself a coach.
I'm a life coach, bro. I got to get my own life straight before I can be a life coach. So, you know, you might be one of those narrow-minded motherfuckers who say, well, that's the borrower's problem. Let me tell you, the problem actually impacts all of us. And how, you might ask? This is from a Forbes article. Even without student loan payments restarting, many borrowers are already stretched thin. Persistent inflation, as we mentioned, and soaring housing costs, especially in San Francisco, continue to squeeze budgets. And with the average student loan payment of $500 a month coming
what mine is.
More Americans will be forced to make tough financial choices to stay afloat. So across the country, many Americans are struggling with mounting credit card debt. What do you do when you can't afford to pay for things like, you know, food and housing, et cetera? You start to rely more and more on your credit cards.
Or it's top ramen time for Carolyn.
Or it's top ramen time, yes, which is not good for you. Then you're going to have higher hospital costs, especially as we get older. Our bodies really can't take that. We're not as durable as we were when we were in college, right? So the most recent data from the Federal Reserve reveals that credit card debt soared to over $1 trillion in Q2 of 2023. And the average balance rose to $5,733 in the first quarter of this year, up more than $700 from last year. Now some borrowers really have to decide what debts they need to prioritize. And retailers and economists are already preparing for a sizable hit to discretionary spending. What happens when that happens? The economy starts to slow down. If you don't have discretionary spending to go out and spend money on, you know, eating out, having fun, supporting small business, which is something you and I really like to do, the repayment of student loans is going to result in a monthly reduction in consumer expenditure in the U.S. of up to $9 billion or over $100 billion annually. So the economy could potentially slow between all of the other factors to a grinding fucking halt. And that's why you see, one of the reasons you see the Biden and Harris administration working so hard to create programs that help you pay less or completely absolve your student loans.
Well, and I really appreciate the comment about people saying like, well, that's your fault.
Yeah.
That's not, you borrowed it and you knew it. Well, yes, I did.
But what's the alternative?
What was my alternative?
Yeah.
And, you know, the decision when I decided to go back for a second master's, I really was like, I can't do that. I can't take out more loans. And a very dear friend of mine said, you know, if this is an investment in your education, you will never go wrong when you invest in your education.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. And especially for people like us who we don't have the ability to be able to work with our hands and we're not physical labor type people. If I were,
you don't want to go in a place I built.
No, you don't want to go somewhere where I did the fucking plumbing. But there are alternatives, and we're going to talk about that for folks who are like, you know what? College doesn't really pump my nads. Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to go into a field where I need a lot of academic, credentials under my belt. Go into the trades. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that because my friends in the trades, and I've said this before, we're particularly tied to the plumbing industry. Yeah. They make more than I do, and they don't have, or as much, and don't have student loan debts. And a lot of them have the same pension I do, or a similar pension. So when they retire, they'll be well taken care of.
Well, I've always said I made more money working as a nanny than I've ever made as a licensed mental health provider.
It's so crazy.
You know, and my stress level was lower. Of course. But I will say my ego felt embarrassed to be a 40-year-old nanny.
Yeah. Well, can we talk a bit, speaking of stress level? Although it's pretty dope and you can make great money, as you said.
Yeah.
But, you know, on the topic of stress, unless you have the good fortune of being super wealthy, this does impact all of us.
Yes.
So, Carolyn, from like an individual mental health perspective, can you talk a bit about the impact of debt on mental health?
Let's talk about this from the bottom up, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about our brain again.
Yeah.
So when this is even just, I'm feeling in this moment, Jen, I feel my heart racing.
Mm-hmm.
My palms are sweaty right now.
Yeah.
Just listening to you talk about the numbers. And then I start thinking about this.
Yeah.
I feel the stress response happening in my body.
Yeah.
And that's happening because my brain is sending out cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that when we are stressed about money, money's a huge stressor.
Totally.
And I kind of talked about the identity piece. Like, I love being a therapist.
Right.
I love this job.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful every day that I get to do the work I do. And I want to be paid well for it. It's hard work. It takes time. I don't get reimbursed for the self-care that I have to do. That's what my job pays for.
Totally.
And I remember going through grad school and a lot, the kind of half of us were saying, well, I want to go into private practice. And at our school, that was very much frowned upon. You should go into community mental health.
Because it's a social justice school.
And again, I believe that I could not survive 10 years working in a community mental health.
I get it.
I would have either, again, the physical trauma of that, of listening to the types of stories that I had to listen to, or that's very judgmental to say these people have to live it, but the amount of paperwork and the amount of work, it is not good for my stress level.
No, I spent a year working in supportive housing with people who were like in active psychosis and substance use disorder. And I had to get the fuck out of there.
And, again, at least when you're compensated, you're able, which is the job I have now, I'm compensated much better.
Right.
So I can do the self-care. But when we're all dealing with, you bring up the topic of student loans, the shift of energy happens in the room. And what's happening in our body is that massive release of cortisol, that stress response, that fight or flight. And where I'm talking about, I just shut down.
Yeah.
And I just go I'm not going to deal with this. And I think a lot of Americans feel this way. We're talking about 54% of US adults say they feel stressed when they think about their debt.
Yeah.
60% have financial stress that leads to disagreements in their relationship.
Totally.
Relatable. Yeah. 72% of respondents say they have an accumulation of the debt and the interest. I'm not even talking about my debt.
Right.
The interest. Yeah. I cannot afford to pay off. I think I am just paying off the interest.
Totally.
And it's not even making a debt.
That's what most people are doing.
They're going to accumulate more debt while they're paying off their debt, which is what you were just talking about.
It's never ending.
It's never ending. And the term, and you can maybe talk about if this is true or false. I've always been told, well, student loan debt's good debt. It's not gonna mess you up, and I think a lot of people believe
there's no such thing as good debt.
And so, but when I think about getting married or buying a house, now my partner's going to be saddled with my debt.
Yeah,
all these other things, and so what do we get when we're stressed out?
We get sick.
What leads us to get sick is we can't sleep. 48% of respondents who are dealing with student loan debt have trouble sleeping.
Yeah,
sleep is the number one issue that if you're going to be dealing with anyone's mental health, if they're not sleeping well, you might as well not even bother trying to do other what I call kind of, when I said the top, work from the bottom up. You can't do top down mental health, which is teaching skills. People come in, they go, teach me coping skills. I can't. You're not going to be able to, I can, but your threshold, if you're not getting good sleep and you're stressed all the time, you're also going to have a higher anxiety. You're not going to live, and this is true for me specifically, I don't live a good social life when I'm trying to save money all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I know, poor me, right?
No,
I can't go to the wine bar now. But those are the things I want to, and yes, I can
you need those outlets,
fun things, but it does make you, I do think people who are dealing with things I'm not dealing with, they will take that anxiety and that depression and it's going to hurt more.
Right.
At least I can go do other things.
And you're not doing incredibly self-destructive behaviors, whereas somebody who has...
Not anymore.
No. Somebody who has fewer resources than us, this stress might put them in a place where they're using alcohol excessively or
absolutely.
drugs and not taking care of themselves.
You want to numb yourself out.
Totally.
And that's what I end up doing. I numb myself out I do my income-driven payment. I pay it. But during the pandemic, when I didn't have to pay my debt, that saved me.
For sure.
I was able to pay rent.
Yeah. No,
but
I get it.
Again, I saved money, and my CPA was like, well, keep saving the money that you would have used for your debt.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There was no way.
Yeah.
I still live somewhat month to month.
Right. Right. But because now you're trying to take the money that you are earning, which constitutes a living wage, to apply what you make to your debt.
Yes.
Which is responsible, but also it's like I can't fully experience the joy associated with having a job that pays more than a living wage, because all of my discretionary income is going to my debt.
Yes. Well, and on top of that, there's not a huge tax benefit.
No.
That comes with debt.
No.
You're not, so not only am I guess I'm not being taxed on the interest, right? But you're only getting a little bit of what you pay in. And I can't afford to pay very much. And again, I made the choice to go to a school that was more expensive, but I don't feel confident that, again, how are we holding these institutions accountable within what they're charging?
We're going to talk about that too, because the price of a college education has gone up significantly and continues to go up every year.
Well, and the long story short here is it causes stress. It takes an impact out on our lives. There is nothing but data that stress is bad for you.
Yeah.
So and it doesn't help when people stigmatize or shame you for wanting to get an education.
Right. Right.
And working in an industry that goes, oh, you got that from this school?
Yeah.
Or, oh, you didn't get this license?
Right.
And again, I love all the coaches. I appreciate you. But that fucking pisses me off.
Yeah.
That I went to school and did my work and did my hours and did my thesis and did all these things, and someone else can charge the same thing with no restrictions, no boundaries. It's a fucking pyramid scheme of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. But I drank the Kool-Aid and I feel like a chump when I could go, wow, I have a friend who just let her license go because she said, I don't want to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want the legal responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't want to have the notes. All these things that I had to pay into were over $30,000 worth of requirements for continuing education. And that's just from a mental health perspective. Right. I have no idea what other people are having to deal with. Yeah. Doctors having to pay malpractice. No one pays my work doesn't pay my malpractice insurance.
No.
That's a lot of money, and it adds up. And I get a little bit of a tax break for that.
Yeah.
And so it causes, you can see, I can hear myself getting stressed. I'm going to take a little micro moment.
I've got some, I'm going to go ahead and plug because I love
You're hearing my cycle of debt spiraling. I am ruminating and spiraling.
But don't worry, I'm going to give you something called Calm from the Absorption Company, which Ian Somerhalder, who played Damon on The Vampire Diaries, and his wife, Nikki Reed, who played, I don't know because I don't like Twilight, but she was in Twilight. They started something called the Absorption Company. Oh, you're about to start a war. Do not call out the Twihards. I'm so sorry. What is this? There's something I follow on Facebook. It's, I can't remember, but it's like a play on Twilight. It's like Twatlight or something. It's freaking hilarious. But I'm going to give you one of these calms, and I guarantee you it's going to work.
I am drinking my changa mushroom blend. It's supposed to make me more thoughtful and like focused.
Mushroom is good. All right, white. Before you get too white, I'm going to take it in the exact opposite direction. We aren't disputing that college graduates do earn more, but there's a big asterisk here because you have to disaggregate that data, right? So just a few points. How much you make depends on your degree and major, which you talked about. And according to a New American article from 2000 to 2018, the black-white racial wage gap increased at every level of educational attainment. And from the same article, in 2018, female workers with bachelor's degrees made on average $56,700, while their male counterparts made on average $75,200. That's insane. So you also have to consider student loan debt. The more advanced the degree, the higher the debt. So that's really important to take into consideration. Plus all these inequities that are inherent in our systemically racist, sexist, and classist society. And also the world of work is changing. According to an article from Higher Ed Dive, 45% of companies plan to eliminate bachelor's degree requirements from some positions in 2024, according to a November 29th report from intelligent.com. This is music to my ears as somebody who does economic and workforce development from a living and sees this as a major barrier to a lot of the clients of the organizations we serve not being able to get a living wage job, but having the skills.
That's what I mean. There should be a skills-based and an education-based way of looking at a candidate.
Yes, for sure. I think that's way more important. And I got friends who, either just obtain their degree or don't have degrees who have a wealth of experience and some of the smartest people I know. And I would hate to see them be discriminated against by a corporation or an organization because they don't have a piece of fucking paper.
Which does nothing.
Nothing. It really doesn't. So in 2023, 55% of companies removed degree requirements, particularly for entry-level and mid-level roles, the survey shows. Employers said they dropped these requirements to create a more diverse workforce, increase the number of applicants for open positions, and because there are other ways to gain skills.
Yes.
It says, due to the expense of attending college, earning a bachelor's degree is generally more difficult for people from traditionally marginalized groups and those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. This is Diane Gaiski, who's a higher education advisor for intelligent.com and professor of strategic communication at Ithaca College, said in her statement. So this is good news for a number of reasons, but the primary one, in my opinion, is that the cost of college has become ridiculously high. Yeah, listen to this.
Oh my God.
This is nuts. This is really going to put it into perspective for you and our listeners. This is from a Forbes article. Over the past 2 decades, published college tuition has increased in price more than any other good or service besides hospital care. Tuition inflation, has risen at a faster rate than the cost of medical services, childcare, and housing. Moreover, underlying costs at American colleges are the highest of any large country in the developed world. This article also attempts to demystify exactly why college in the U.S. is so expensive. So these are the claims. The proximate cause of tuition inflation are familiar: administrative bloat, overbuilding of campus amenities, a model dependent on high wage labor, and the easy availability of subsidized student loans. So, however, the deeper question is why the market has allowed these cost inefficiencies to persist. In most industries, this is a little economics lesson for all y'all, and for me too. This really very makes sense.
Thank you.
In most industries, competition brings down the cost of products over time. Beth Akers of the Manhattan Institute explores 4 potential explanations. Students overestimate the return to a degree, or the financial return associated with the degree, I think is a better way of putting it.
You mean my liberal arts major won't help me?
Right? I have an AA in liberal studies. What else does she say? Colleges are not transparent about their true prices. Too few institutions operate in each regional market, and there are significant barriers to entry for new educational providers. So we're not going to delve too deeply into the reasons. This isn't an economics class, but people are starting to really say, fuck this. And the heater just kicked on upstairs, y'all. So if you hear something whirring in the background, I'm surprised. That means my husband turned on the heater.
Whoa, he must really be cold.
Yeah, speaking of economics, thanks PG&E, you fucking bloodsuckers who just raised your rates yet again, which has an impact on us, but on people who are lower socioeconomic status, but not quite low income enough to qualify for some of the rebates and low income programs. We're being fucked.
Talking about a bloated institution.
Yeah, totally. And a monopoly. Anyway, I digress. So in 2021, the percentage of U.S. residents between 18 to 24 enrolled in college was 38.1%. That's the lowest it's been since 2006. And in 2022, the college enrollment rate was 39%, which is still low compared to the previous decade, because a lot of folks are pointing to the pandemic to at least partly explain college enrollment decline. So Carolyn, maybe talk to us a bit about how the pandemic really started to shift this notion that college is the only way to make a solid living wage.
Oh, 100%. Well, we all kind of had to pivot.
I hate that word.
I know, me too. That's why I said it.
Screaming like Sam Jackson. Bill told me, can you not scream into the microphone anymore when he edits our podcast?
Oh, really?
And he's like, why are you fucking screaming?
Because we're angry.
I'm activated, dog.
I don't know how else to be.
Go on.
Well, okay. So, you know, we all didn't have to go to work anymore.
Like physically go to work.
Physically go to work.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was phenomenal because I think a lot of industries realized that that wasn't necessary.
And a lot of us didn't. Not all of us,
Oh,
right?
right.
There were frontline workers who were doing
did have to go to work. But, you know, I lost my place. Sorry.
That's okay. I interrupted you.
That's okay. That's okay. I appreciate your
talking about the
interest.
shift to working from home.
Well, it's hard because a lot of people lost their jobs too. And a lot of people, you know, my industry boomed during that time. People needed mental health.
Right.
And people relied on it. And all of a sudden that was seen as a necessity. But a lot of jobs were kind of outsourced or not needed anymore. A lot of workers lost their jobs. And so if you were thinking about, I had a lot of clients who were like, what am I going to do? But it was from a place of panic, not a place of, I'm choosing to make this choice. And I had a lot of people who were like, well, I've worked with a lot of recruiters, especially there weren't jobs for them to recruit for anymore. And, you know, again, this idea that you should be able to go back to school is exciting. Yeah. Like to me, I wish I could be a full-time student. I love learning. It's fun. For the sake of learning. I don't like doing papers and stuff. But, you know, everything shifted. And so I think a lot of people had to make decisions about what exactly was the nature of the work that they were doing and how are they going to make money anymore? And how are they going to survive? And at that time, we didn't even know what was going to happen. Right.
Everything was up in the air.
Everything was up in the air for a while. And then we got kind of used to it. And then, you know, and then we're back here now. And then vaccines. And now we're back here like as if nothing ever happened. Right. But, you know, what do you think the number one concern for people is when they're considering going?
The cost.
Yeah. And if you didn't have the money and you didn't have the resources and especially if you're single and living by yourself, and I'm just talking Bay Area. Right. I don't know what it was like other places, but I'm assuming, and this lovely article in the New Yorker, I love the New Yorker. I love this picture too, because it's this like sort of person like in a mask, like floating into a dark hole. Well, they're using the mask as a parachute. I get it. And I think that's the young people think of college as an investment in their future. Right. Yeah. And the future's changing, and you're also, I never wanted to take online classes. That never felt exciting to me. Felt inspiring.
It's not the college experience.
And I feel really bad. Anyone who's a student at that time, God bless you. Yes. And if you're a teacher and if you're a parent dealing with that. But we know that people didn't learn as well. Right. They weren't getting what they needed. The fun part about college was having these really cool dialogue discussions. And I would probably still do that virtually, but there's I run groups online now and I don't love it.
Well, you're missing that social emotional interaction piece, which is a huge part of learning, especially for a young person.
And you're telling me that you're not multitasking?
Oh yeah.
While I can see your
your eyes aren't on me, dog.
Your eyes aren't on me and you're looking down, or I can see you looking at other things. And so when the future changes, people really started to question if this even was something they wanted to do. Yeah. And it was never I can speak for myself in this, it never would have been, both my parents had higher educations and degrees and doctorates, and it sort of never occurred to me that I wasn't going to graduate high school or I wasn't going to go to college at least. Grad school, I don't know. Yeah. But, you know, the landscape is really different now for young people. Yeah. And for anyone trying to go back into the field. And so when we look at the myth of college in America, which is what this New Yorker article is about, I think people are questioning using critical thinking. Why am I? And that's why a lot of people came back home. Yeah. Why am I going to pay extravagant tuition when I'm online at home? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense. Right. What am I paying for? And what you are paying for is the professors who are supposed to be, you know, researching and studying. And that, to me, that was always the fun part of school, is I learned cool things from my professors. Yeah. But then you had people who were also burnt out, paying off their student loans and can't afford, I wanted to teach in higher education. You make so little money as a university grad school professor.
Oh, as an adjunct professor in particular, you have to have multiple jobs. Yeah.
You maybe make $3,000 for that unit of work. And I'm like, that's their incentive for me.
It's a labor of
to
love.
want to do that. But I love teaching and I love studying, but there's no way.
Yeah.
And so we get people who I'm kind of glad people got disillusioned because I think it pointed out this discrepancy of what are you actually paying for?
Right.
And are we actually getting quality people? Not, and, you know, again, it was younger and younger. It was less, you know, but well, although I think that can be good to have newer professors, but you know, it just is different. I'm not going to pay this amount of money to go to this crazy expensive school when I'm learning online. Yeah. It's just not the same.
Well, you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, which I mean, you do when you're going to an institute of higher education, right? You're doing all the research and everything yourself, but it really felt like the onus was almost exclusively on you, and the negatives outweighed the benefits.
Well, and when it switches, you're doing pre-recorded lectures. Yeah. You're doing evenings. I went to the other reason why I chose the program we went to was it was intended to be a work and study program.
Oh, I see.
Now, the first time I got a graduate degree, it was on the weekends. So I worked full time. Yep. And then I went all day Saturday. Yep. Every Saturday for 3 years.
And Friday night.
And sometimes having to, and then they would, when I went to the second program, it was also geared as a work and study. It occurred to me within the first week where they changed the schedule. Yeah. Where it was supposed to be a certain amount of days. So I had set up my job to do that.
That sounds like our school.
Yeah. And what they ended up doing was saying, no, you need to come from 3 to 11. That you have to go from 3 to 7:30 or 7:30 to 10. Oh, God. And it's going to be certain days a week. Yeah. That literally happened the day we all were signing up for classes.
That's insane.
Switched.
That's insane.
And so I had this moment. This is when I ran into the student loan office. Yeah. And I was crying to you because I said, I fucked up. I cannot work and do school.
Yeah, you didn't fuck up. They fucked you.
And I was so upset because I really wanted to embrace the education part. Yes. And I really wanted to have the time to really do this. This is what I went from going, this is my job versus this is going to be something that's going to be a career for me. I do not want to stress myself out working full time. Yes. Can I do both? And that's when I ran in. I was literally having a panic attack that day. And I see Jen. Yeah, oh my God. I was beside myself. I think I had already lost 10. Grad school is the best diet I ever went on
really
from trauma.
Is.
I lost 10. I didn't gain a freshman 15. No. I lost a grad school 20.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but I came into the office and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. I can't afford to work my job anymore and go to school and pay my rent. Right. There's no fucking way. And you told me about Grad Plus, which I didn't know about.
Which unfortunately, it solves the immediate issue. But at the end of the day, we're advising, because I worked in financial aid, we're advising people just take on more debt.
Yes.
And Grad Plus and Parent Plus have a higher interest rate associated with them than subsidized and unsubsidized loans. I know.
She was a short-term problem solver.
I was, and that's why I didn't have a choice.
Last. Well, and again, my parents, I was very privileged in that my parents paid for my undergrad. Yeah. They did do that.
That's awesome.
And I would never have asked them to pay for my graduate school. Yeah. But this was something I wanted to be able to do by myself. I would not have been able to do this degree. And again, it makes me wonder, maybe I shouldn't have.
Yep. No, I agree. And I don't think you shouldn't have. I think the system, it's not us that needs to change. It's the system that needs to change.
But this is what's starting to happen. Yeah. Is people are going, and what's sucking too is I'll bring AI into this. A lot of these jobs that we're going for aren't even going to be filled by humans anymore.
It's true.
Now I've gone down another rabbit hole. I'm so sorry.
Well, we'll talk about AI in another episode because I think it's important to kind of dissect that, the good, the bad, and the ugly associated with AI in this burgeoning industry, which is happening right here in our own backyard in San Francisco. But I think that makes a lot of sense, right? I think the pandemic caused us to really reevaluate what's important. Yeah. I think that, students or people who are considering college took a really long, hard look at the return on their investment. And if you're a woman looking at how much you're making compared to how much a man is making or a person of color, comparing those statistics, you're like, fuck this, how else can I make money? And we're also seeing that in the sense, and I can tell you from a workforce development perspective, when it comes to these low-paying frontline jobs, businesses are having a difficult time filling these jobs because people are saying, fuck that, I'm not doing these jobs anymore. No. And God bless the people who have the ability to do that because I don't know what they're doing for work. And then you have other people who are working not just one job, but 2 jobs to make ends meet. And a lot of those folks do have degrees. And so I think if nothing else good came from the pandemic, it was this reevaluation of what's important.
Yes.
Do I really want to live to work or do I want to work to live.
Yeah.
You know, which is the latter is where I'm at. And I'm fortunate to be able to be in this situation. Yeah. So, you know, if we believe that if you want to go to college, money or lack thereof shouldn't be an impediment. No. You know, for me, I knew that was the only route. For you, you knew that was the only route for us personally and professional was to do.
I tried to be a dancer. I tried.
Awesome. You did. You could still be a dancer.
You don't make shit doing that either, and your body gets fucked up.
I just want to dance.
You and I, probably between each other, have had every job there is.
Oh, yeah. I've had a ton of jobs. And I think that's what makes me really good at doing workforce development.
Yeah.
Particularly working with young people. Because I'm like, dude, I've had every job under the sun. And I can honestly say for the first time in my life, the job that I've had for the last 2 years genuinely checks 90% of my boxes, you know, but it took a long time to get there.
This is the happiest, I think. Well, you want to be able to, this is the American dream. Yeah. We were just talking about this. Is it possible to like your job?
Yep.
Feel like you're doing good, ethical work.
Right.
That's serving people, that has meaning.
If that's what you want to do.
Like your coworkers.
Yep. I have all of that, dude. All of that. And that I can honestly say for the first time.
Good for you.
I know. But I worked
I'm really happy
hard
for you.
And I worked in
busted your ass.
Terrible situations where I was being sexually harassed. Like I've mentioned in a previous episode where I put my arm on my chair rest at my first job and one of the bosses
Did you get a dick rub in?
Was rubbing his dick on my arm. Like, come on, man. I had to deal with that.
God.
I had to deal with working for, you know, really trying to do like heart and soul work, but walking into your office every day and seeing like cockroaches on the floor and dealing with people having schizophrenic outbreaks and getting calls at 2 a.m. about said schizophrenic outbursts, you know, like God bless those folks. But I had to go through all of that. And thank God, thanks to Biden and Harris, I was able to go back and retroactively count all the time I spent working at these nonprofit jobs that were stressful as fuck and these education jobs and put them toward public service loan forgiveness, which we're going to talk about. But before we do that, cost should not be an impediment to college. There are a couple of ways that you can reduce your costs. So consider dual enrollment. You can take some college classes while you're in high school. That's kind of cool. Community college. I cannot stress enough how important this is. I did 2 years.
Done community college.
You know, woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? But if you're in a position right now where you're considering your options, I did 2 years at the College of San Mateo. Mm-hmm. And
it's a great school.
It's a great school.
Beautiful
I did night
campus.
School while I worked full time, which was really tough, but I'm glad that I did it because I was with a more mature student body at night. Yeah. It's a lot of adult learners. And so I didn't have to deal with a lot of bullshit. And so there was no distractions, you know? Yeah. And so I did that. And then I transferred to the school that we were talking about. And so I did save myself a considerable amount of money. And I highly recommend doing that. Yeah. Housing options, right? Can you live at home?
Oh my God.
I know that living on campus is part of the experience. I'm really jealous whenever my husband talks about living on campus at UC Davis and how much fun it is and all these amazing people he met. I didn't have that experience. You didn't either. We went to commuter schools. Yeah. But if you can live at home, do it. Buy used textbooks. That's what I always did. I never bought new textbooks. And go to the school that gives you the most aid, dude.
Dude, we could do a whole show on fucking textbook shit.
Oh my God.
What the hell is that? Spending $300 or $400 on books?
And I hate Amazon for a number of reasons, but at the same time, you can get your books in 2 days' time. Used books at a discounted price. And for me, here's the barrier. I would have to wait for my financial aid to come in order to purchase my books. Yep. So for the first week to 2 weeks, I didn't even have my textbooks. And professors weren't necessarily sympathetic at a social justice school. And so when the time came, because Amazon wasn't as robust as it is now, there was no Prime membership when I went to school, I would have to go to the bookstore on campus. I say that I bought used books, but it was only when I can. Because by the time I got there to make by the time financial aid never came in until a week to 2 weeks after classes started, which is another thing that I hope has been fixed, but doubt it has been fixed, right? Yeah. I couldn't do my assignments. It was fucked up. And then when I went to the bookstore, the only thing that was left was brand new books. Yep. So me as a low income person was having to spend less than the people who had the financial ability to go in early and purchase their books. So, but
inequitable.
Yeah. I still graduated fucking magna cum laude. Yeah. Fuck y'all. In spite of all the challenges. So anyway.
Jen's scrappy though. You're very good at hustling and figuring shit out.
That's from growing up poor.
I don't think the average person can do that.
Anybody who has grown up low income can.
Okay.
And, that's what's so funny because I work in government and we have no money to spend on anything. But so many of the people I work with grew up like me and have the added disadvantage of being a person of color and being low income in this
so you
environment.
have to. You don't have a choice.
So we're all scrappy as fuck. We're like, oh, we know how to have an event with no money. Like, we can do this, but if you had the benefit of growing up with advantages like our kid is doing, he's not going to necessarily have the same resources.
Yeah.
He's not going to know how to make a fucking good ass dinner for 4 people on $20.
You better show him, Mom.
I will.
You better show that white boy.
Oh, yeah. He's going to learn. He's going to earn it. So there are also alternatives to college. So let me take this opportunity to promote good union jobs yet again. Workers who are members of labor unions in the U.S. make 18% more than their non-union counterparts, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics annual report on union membership. I am a union member. I get raises that my union fights for on my behalf. My husband works for a labor union and sees the benefits that this union bestows on its members every day. And those folks are making a living wage and they're able to stay in the Bay Area, the most expensive place in the fucking universe, without a college education and without the corresponding debt. Unions fucking rock. So the union difference was even greater for women workers, 23% more than their non-union counterparts. Black folks, African Americans, 20% more. Latinos, 35% more. That is fucking huge. The union is a great equalizer. Yeah. It really is. So because they pay you for work, everybody is paid the same union rate. They have the same wages. They have the same benefits. And if you're lucky, you have the same retirement. Yeah. And that's something that I'm not going to have to worry about. Yep. I have a pension and my husband has a pension. And we are so incredibly grateful, especially since our jobs, they pay decently. We're middle class, but we're not making money hand over fist as, if we were in private industry.
So really when we're talking about online dating, we should be ladies, I found myself a union man. Totally. And I'm going to marry that man. Totally. And I'm going to borrow his pension.
Totally. He didn't have to go to college. He makes 6 figures.
He did it right. He used extra money that he had to travel. Yep. And although he has a stressful job, he's protected by his union. Yep. And he has all these benefits. And he is the most under-stressed man that I've ever met. Yep. He doesn't have to worry about these things. And he has a brother and a sisterhood. Yep. I don't have that.
Yep, it's very true. But we're going to change that. We're going to get you into the city. So if the industry you're considering has unionized options, please do not sleep on that. And, in talking about jobs that don't require a college education, we're going to tell you what some of the best paying jobs are that don't require a degree. Commercial airline pilot, you do not need a degree. They make good money. Yeah, it's a lot of traveling. If you're into that sort of thing,
you might develop an alcohol problem.
Yeah, stressful as fuck.
Yeah, your plane might blow up. Don't fly planes.
Yeah, you got wheels falling off your plane and doors blowing off and shit.
Terrorists might blow you up, but you won't have any debt.
Sully's landing on the goddamn Hudson River. Oh, fun fact. My first job, I made uniforms for the major airlines. Not personally made uniforms. I was doing, we had a whole sweatshop dedicated to that. No, they were treated very well. But Sullenberger is a Bay Area guy and would come into the shop to get his uniforms.
Really?
Sully. Yeah. And unfortunately,
we're aging ourselves. Do y'all know Sully Sullenberger?
I know. I didn't meet Sully, but also very, very sad that United pilots who lost their lives in 9/11 would, I think, also come into the shop. Nothing is sadder.
Nothing good, Jen says, ever doesn't have a sad part.
I know. You guys, I will never, ever forget. I'm really taking you on a sad journey here.
Go for it, girl.
Putting together the commemorative United uniforms for the guys who passed and sending them to their families just so they have this memory of them. It was the saddest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Anyway, back to making money. This is your boyfriend, trained conductor, engineer. Make great money. Yep. Skilled trades, which I mentioned. Civil service like police, firefighter, what I do. Starting salary for police officers in San Francisco is $103,000 a year. Talk about a stressful job. But you make good money. And you could be a community officer who makes a difference in a community. You can walk that beat, you can get to know people, and you can be the kind of police that folks say, like, oh, that person made a difference. Yeah, in my life.
Just don't be racist anyway.
Yeah, we know there are a lot of good police officers out there. I know plenty of them. They're wonderful, wonderful folks. So IT, you can get a certificate at almost any community college. I work for the city of San Francisco. We have an incredible program called Tech SF. Definitely encourage you to check that out. You can be an executive assistant. If you're an executive assistant for like a VC, you're making 6 figures. A real estate agent, not the best industry to go into right now, but it's something that I considered.
I have to laugh though, Jen. As you're reading all this, these are most of my clients.
Really?
Teachers. The only thing you're missing off here is teachers.
Which typically don't make good money.
And medical profession.
Yeah.
But we... yeah, we gotta get mental health in here.
Well, medical personnel really have stressful jobs and need outlets for sure. So I mentioned this previously. There are resources available thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. I'm going to talk to you about a few of them. So the Biden-Harris administration student debt relief plan explained, first and foremost, fuck the Supreme Court, because Biden wanted to just off the bat absolve people of up to $20,000 in student loans, depending on how much they made. And the Supreme Court said, nope, you can't do it.
I don't even know why that would have been a Supreme Court. What does that have to do with the Constitution?
I don't remember exactly, but something to do with commerce or discrimination. I don't know.
What about my pursuit of happiness?
Yeah, we'll get back to it. We'll look it up and let you know. So if you need a student loan, a lower payment, consider applying for what Carolyn mentioned, the income-driven repayment plan.
And they are pretty good about it.
Yeah.
Like I've called them and been like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
This is too much. I'm not buying groceries.
Yes.
And they're actually they will work with you.
Yes, they will, because they want their money one way or another. And some money is better than no money. But now there's something called the SAVE plan, which both Carolyn and I have. And under the SAVE plan, making even periodic or partial payments may lower the amount of interest you accrue each month. So the administration earlier this year launched the most affordable student loan payment plan, which is the SAVE plan. And it makes many borrowers' monthly payments as low as $0 and prevents balances from growing because of unpaid interest. Right now, I pay $154 a month, which is incredible. Good. Incredible. So for borrowers who still can't make payments, we created a temporary on-ramp period. Not we, but the Biden administration.
Jen and I did this.
Yeah, I don't work in that level of government. They created a temporary on-ramp period through September 30th of 2024. So take notes, folks. This on-ramp period protects borrowers from having a delinquency reported to their credit reporting agency. We're going to link all this in our show notes, okay? Are you in default? Get out of default with a program called Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a temporary program from the U.S. Department of Education that offers special benefits for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. It ends in September of this year, though, guys. So take advantage of it if you're going to take advantage of it. All right. And then there's public service loan forgiveness.
Talk about this, because this is complicated to me.
This is complicated. And so what I should have been getting public service loan forgiveness for as long as I was working at these jobs where I was working in either a nonprofit or an institution of higher education or for the government. But a lot of people weren't getting what they should have been getting based on where they were working.
What I was told is if you work in one of those institutions for 10 years, but it can be a combination. It doesn't have to be the same institution.
That's right. And it's 10 years of consecutive payments. Or not consecutive, it's 10 years of payments. And so this is something that I'm eligible for now, working for a local government, fixing the public service loan forgiveness program so that borrowers who go into public service get the debt relief they're entitled to under law. That's what the Biden-Harris administration did. Before President Biden took office, only 7,000 people ever received debt relief through PLSF. After fixing the program, the administration has now canceled student loan debt for nearly 800,000 public service workers, and I'm almost in tears because that's about to be me.
Yeah.
And that yoke, that burden is about to be lifted from me.
What's that going to do to your mental health, Jen?
It's going to improve it significantly because I'm going to go from having $137,000 in student loan debt to just high credit card debt, like most people.
Yeah.
It's not going to completely alleviate my money-related debt or stress, but it's going to help significantly.
But it's going to go down.
Yeah, it's going to go down. And it makes me feel like, not that I feel like my time spent in public service has been a waste.
No.
But I'm now getting something for that.
Yeah.
I'm now getting something for going into a job and making $65,000, which prior to the which going to work for the government, that's what I started at. And I only went from $65,000 at that job to $84,000 over the period of 3 years just by advancing. Yeah. But still, $84,000 in the Bay Area isn't shit.
That pays your rent.
Right. And now I'm fortunate to make low six figures. But there's a significant amount of money, which I know I'll be happy about, that's being taken out on a paycheck basis, each paycheck basis, to go into my pension. So I'm not even seeing as much in my paycheck as I would, which is all a good thing ultimately, but contributes to stress on a monthly basis.
Yes.
So that's where we're at, y'all. Take advantage of these programs, right? God forbid Biden isn't reelected, but these programs will all go away lickety split if he who must not be named is elected from prison.
Is that true? That doesn't make sense to me. Once you make it, like, why would it get taken away?
Well, these are, I think that any administration that comes in could say, all right, once these programs sunset, we're not going to renew them and we're not going to make any new programs.
Well, he doesn't get to do that because he hasn't paid his taxes. That's not fair.
I know, the irony, right? The irony.
That's not fair.
Okay, we're not even going to go down this road because talk about trauma and stress. I don't want to think about the orange man who shall not be named on this show.
But what am I going to do, Jen?
Oh, God.
What's your advice for me?
My advice for you is to take a calm. But
I think I need more than that.
Honestly, I'm gonna help you get a job where you are eligible for public service loan forgiveness because 10 years seems like a long time, but if the SAVE plan remains intact and you're able to pay, a low amount for the duration of that time, then it's going to go by really quickly.
Can I tell a really funny story?
Yes.
When my father passed away, super sad, but somehow when my mom had to get the death certificate, they marked me as the deceased.
I remember this. Jesus.
And I didn't know about this. I got a couple weird things that happened with the bank, and I was like, that's weird. Then one day I get a letter from the student loan, and it says your debt has been forgiven because we've been notified that Carolyn has died.
You're like, I need to stay dead and move to Mexico.
All I needed to do was send a death certificate. And you don't understand the amount of thought that went into, I could probably pay someone to create a death certificate and Carolyn will die with her debt and the end. And I'm not kidding you. I thought long and hard about being staying dead.
Everybody's going to Google, how can I get a fake death certificate?
I feel like you could do it. She died and I'll just become, Minerva from somewhere else.
You can get anything, y'all, on the internet, on the dark web. All right, that's it for this episode of The World According to Jen and Carolyn. Get your asses over to our TikTok, like our video, check out our Instagram, but I'm tired of asking for 5 stars. Just fucking give us 5 stars at this point.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Love you. Goodbye.